Hari Om. The prerequisites set forth in the Sadhana Chatushtaya have been daunting for most students of Vedanta through the ages. Additionally, the language and context of the Vedantic texts sadly have become alien to most contemporary aspirants. However, some verses and mantras lend themselves to be accurately translated into a foreign language. Additionally, a context relevant to the modern age can also be extracted from some of the verses. One such verse is verse 14, chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. What follows is an exegesis based on Bhagavan Shankaracharya's principle of superimposition of this verse. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shita ushna sukha dukkadaha agama apayino anityaha tantitikshasva bharata. O son of Kunti, the contacts of senses with their objects cause cold and heat, pleasure and pain. These come and go, they are fleeting, O Bharata prince, endure them. The word matra is accurately translated into English as measure. In using the words matra and sparshaha, Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna that the instant the sense organs touch a sense object externally and simultaneously engage internally with the mind and intellect, a measurement takes place. For example, the moment I grasped this apple, I knew its approximate weight and its texture. Sri Krishna, in no uncertain terms, informs us that the five sense organs, when coupled with the mind and the intellect, form a measuring instrument. To fully grasp the implications of Sri Krishna's pronouncements in our modern context, it is instructive to get a basic understanding of a measuring instrument. Any measuring instrument must possess two qualities. One, the ability to remain unchanged during the measurement. For example, the physical property of a balance scale should remain unchanged when weighing, say, an apple. Two, it must possess a standardized reporting mechanism. To achieve this feature, all measuring instruments employ a universally accepted standard of measure that is unrelated to the object being measured. For example, gram is a standard of measure for the simple balance scale. Thus, the balance scale will measure an apple's weight as 70 grams if measured today and pretty much the same tomorrow. Please note, the standard of measure, in this case the gram, is a human constructed standard of measure completely unrelated to the object being measured, which is the apple. It merely represents the attribute and not the attribute itself. Now, this is an extremely important a piece of information that must register. Now, with these two pieces of information, that is the invariability and the standard of measure of a measuring instrument, we can now tackle the verse in our present day context. As pointed out earlier, Sri Krishna postulates that the body, mind and intellect, collectively known as the BMI complex, is a measuring instrument. The five sense organs, the eyes, the ears, the tongue, the nostrils and the skin, are the five sensors of the human measuring instrument. Each sensor samples the various external objects and relays the data to the mind and intellect, which collectively constitute the sentient entity referred to as the internal cognitive apparatus, also known as the Antakarana. Bhagavan Shankaracharya clarifies that the Antakarana measures the external state of the world as well as the internal state of the jiva. We will now unpack how these two types of measurements work. On my right, there is a bowl of water at room temperature. On my left, there's a bowl with ice cubes. Now, the moment I place my right palm inside the water bowl, the sensors, that is the fingers, relay the temperature data to the Antakarana, and the Antakarana registers the temperature and reports back to the world as the water is slightly cold. Now, the attribute being measured is temperature of the water and is represented by the standard of measure cold. We will now take a second measurement. I will place my left palm, which has been immersed in ice for some time, into the water bowl. Now, the same measurement process is completed, and now the new report is the water is slightly warm. Now, we will all agree that the higher temperature registered by the left palm is due to the left palm sensors calibrated to a lower temperature. This extra phantom heat registered by the Antakarana is entirely unrelated to the temperature of the water. This conclusion is very important for understanding the keystone of Bhagavan Shankaracharya's teachings and bears repeating. This extra phantom heat is not in the water, but is entirely in the Antakarana. But the ignorant jiva erroneously superimposed this extra phantom heat on the water. Now, what about the earlier right palm measurement? The same Antakarana and the same standard of measure was used to take this measurement also. If we introspect on this for a little while, we will realize that the cold temperature registration was also not an attribute of water, but was an erroneous superimposition by the jiva on the water. In fact, this heat cold is a standard of measure of the Antakarana used in measuring external sense objects and nothing to do with the water itself. Just like the gram was nothing to do with the weight of the apple being measured. So far, we have unpacked how a particular attribute of water is cognate, which in this case was temperature. Now, let us see how the same inner cognitive apparatus, that is the Antakarana, measures the internal state of the jiva. Now, our shared experience when we seek heat during an ice cold winter storm is one of pleasure or happiness when we finally register the heat at a fireplace. However, we also experience sorrow when we are unable to alleviate the heat of a scorching summer day. Now, when somebody publicly announces, "I am happy," we do not know why that person is happy, but we know what happiness is because we have all experienced it. Please note that it is the Antakarana that is reporting the state of the jiva and must therefore possess a separate standard of measure for the internal measurement. Bhagavan Shankaracharya points out that there is a universal consensus on what constitutes happiness or sorrow among the jivas across the world. Because of this consensus and based on the previous line of reasoning, happiness or sorrow is the standard of measure when measuring the internal state of the jiva. Just as in the external measurement, happiness or sorrow are superimposed on something other than the jiva. This something is the Atman of the Shruti. The jiva, stripped of its happiness or sorrow, is what Shruti calls as Brahman. This Brahman is our real self. In the above analysis, it has been shown that happiness or sorrow are a direct result of superimposing heat or cold on an external object. From this, we can extrapolate the other four sense organs to also possess their own standards of measure. Thus, the tongue superimposed taste on the object, the ears superimpose sound on the object, in this case when I bite on the apple, the nostrils superimpose smell on the object, and finally the eyes superimpose the color, in this case the red color on the object. The internal cognitive instrument, the antakarana, creates an integrated representation of these 5 individual standards of measure and superimposes, the jiva then superimposes it on the sense object and proceeds to commit the enormous blunder of giving the sense object qualities it does not possess. It is this fundamental error that is the cause of happiness or sorrow in the jiva. What this means is that everything we cognize as external is actually a representation in the mind. Now let us analyze the antakarana, because that's where everything seems to be happening. The standard of measure was established for both types of measurement. But remember the second quality of a measuring instrument, that was the invariable component. So what is the invariable component of the antakarana? We know that the mind is constantly changing. The intellect also changes as it makes the choices for the jiva. It is also known by modern science that every cell in the body dies and is replaced by a new one. So none of them can be a candidate for this invariable component. The only invariable component is the Atma. Now let's go a little further on the same lines. A common challenge presented by any measuring instrument is that the invariable component is degraded over time, and they frequently need to be recalibrated using an external gold standard. For example, in the case of the balance scale, over a couple of years, we need to get an external gold standard and recalibrate the measuring instrument. Now, in the case of antakarana, because the Atman is the invariant, eternal, omniscient, and omnipresent standard, the antakarana does not require recalibration. For its external measurements, when sense organs degrade, they need to be regenerated. For example, an aging ear will need an hearing aid, or an eye that is not working very well, that has cataract, the cataract has to be replaced with an internal artificial lens. Now, for the internal measurement, no sense organs are involved. Because of this, the jiva never loses its measurement of happiness or sorrow, which means it always knows when it is happy and when it is sorrow, right when it was a child, young child, all the way to an old person. Now, the additional information that we all know is that the jiva does not have the ability to enjoy happiness present within itself. It needs an external catalyst. The sense object is the catalyst. For example, a jiva's predilection for coffee was cemented because of a measurement of happiness very early in his or her life while sipping coffee. That measurement was registered in his memory or her memory, and whenever the jiva wants to experience that happiness, it reaches for that cup of coffee. This monumental error is endemic to all jivas, and Sri Krishna says none can escape the effect of this error. But he also says the wise person who has understood this error will find in himself or herself the fortitude to bear the detrimental effects of the sense objects. In conclusion, it should be pointed out that the superimposition explanation for the universe has withstood the scrutiny of many talented individuals for over 1200 years and is a testament to the genius of Bhagavan Shankaracharya. Hari Om.